Everyone, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Mr. Goodwin will be joining us late this evening. At this time, due adoption of the agenda, I do have one addition to new business, and that will be item 5D, and it will be personal property tax relief review. Are there any other additions or deletions or changes to the agenda? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve.
We'll move. Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. All right, next is, special presentations and appearances, a presentation from the James Madison Museum. Bethany Sullivan.
Good evening.
Good evening, welcome.
Chairman, Vice Chairman, members, thank you for giving me this few minutes. You did receive two handouts. The childlike one is the 4th and 5th grade work program that Foundation Forward provides for free in whatever quantity we might need for school groups and just handouts in general. They're working on a middle and high school level program now. The other part of the handout is the brochure from Foundation Forward for the Charters of Freedom. The museum lot has been chosen for Orange County's location of the Charters of Freedom. It is the founding documents as seen at the National Archives, reproduced life-size in bronze sheets. Can you all hear me through this? Okay. And this is something their aim is in the next 10 years to get as many of these settings as they can throughout the states of the United States of America. They don't call them monuments, which was my mistake. Monuments are dedicated to commemorating people and places and things of the past. Our founding documents are still alive with us and our government and our country. These settings cost our taxpayers $0, not 1 cent. Foundation Forward does all the fundraising. They have our monument, our setting money already ready to go. I'm waiting for the letter of intent or memorandum of understanding to be received at the town manager's office. Once that happens, I can then collect people who are interested in helping to form a steering committee. And our basic job would be to promote and let people know about it, to hold special events, and eventually there will be fundraising for the commemorative pavers. If you wish to have pavers done, that is something that you pay for yourself. And so the brochure gives you their mission statement, the individuals that are on that foundation, and gives you pictures of completed settings. Now, Yow Meadow Park in Culpeper had their setting completed and dedicated last November 22nd, I believe. There are a number of different finishes you can get, but if you pop down to Yow Meadow, you can get a nice look at what one of the settings does look like. And I just wanted to formally let you know about this, that it was coming, because I would like to get this spread countywide and involve Lake of the Woods, Germanna, Gordonsville, and reach out and get as many people involved and excited about this as I can.
Very good.
Do you have any questions for me?
So when do you intend to start this drive?
Well, I'm waiting for the memorandum of understanding, letter of agreement, and once that's signed, I can officially start asking people. Right now, Dr. Cecil Sneed has said he wants to be involved. Deanna Marshall, Chamber of Commerce, wants to be involved. Mr. Sutphin from Germanna wants to be involved as well. On January, what date? Second Wednesday in January. Mr. Lewis and Dr. Strader are coming back to do a presentation like they did for the town council, but for the Tourism Advisory Committee. And I'm assuming that that could be attended by any of you that would wish to come and see the video, ask them questions at that time as well. And our monument, pardon me, our setting, because of COVID, they're on a backlog. However, I've done a lot of footwork and gotten a lot of interest with people, and they're gonna move us up on the list. They're hoping to get us started sometime during mid to later 2021. And they provide all the documentation documents. They provide reenactors for your dedication ceremony. In the Constitution framework, underneath it will be a time capsule. And we will invite schools and individuals to send essays. What does the Constitution mean to you? That sort of thing. And then in 2087, that time capsule will be open. And they're going to take pictures of everyone there. Everyone who donates, whether it's 5 cents to $1 million, everyone's name is going to be in that time capsule for having contributed.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you.
All right, consent agenda,
So moved.
second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. All right. On to new business, item 5A, adoption of bylaws for the Tourism Advisory Committee and appointment of members. Ms. Carter.
Hello, good evening, Chairman, gentlemen. I'm sure you've had a moment to be able to read over our memo. We wanted to kind of get up to speed with TAC and organizationally guideline-wise. So we pulled together an order of bylaws that seem to fit pretty nicely to the organization for what its purpose is. And we wanted you all to review those and let us know if there's any issues. If not, we'd love to be able to go ahead and bring those on board. And also wanted to give you a updated list of our current roster. So we are up to date when it comes to our appointments for our committee members that are currently sitting on the committee. That will also start a term limit in a set schedule that will happen after that, thus January starting in 2021. You guys have any questions about any of that?
Do you have anyone that is looking at or has interest in agritourism?
That one had just occurred, that we had lost our agritourism, so I haven't had much opportunity to reach out just yet. So I'm hoping to do that between now and January if possible. If not, by January we'll then be able to get that, hopefully someone on board.
Okay.
We've got with Eric and from Honolulu and Kenny White, since they're both winery, they can kind of, I mean, obviously they fit within the agritourism sector too, so they can kind of help us with that in the meantime with a vacancy. But I do plan on trying to get someone else in that place.
Okay, very good. Any questions, comments?
Yeah.
I move we adopt the advisory committee bylaws and reappoint the membership.
Second?
Second.
All right, a double second, all in favor?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make it clear that we do want to appoint half the members for 1-year terms and the other half for 2-year terms. That way we can have them staggered.
Yeah, to begin that staggered.
So we haven't.
That's in my motion.
Very good, and so perhaps I could suggest that we just alternate by making maybe the first name is a 2-year term, and then the second is a 1-year, and then we just keep alternating. That's just random.
Well,
We hadn't picked a way to do that yet. We were gonna bring that in January. But
yeah,
if
and
you-
Allison was able to kind of lay it out on a scheduling based on sector that they, because we don't obviously want a giant, void in a sector, so we had a little bit of duplication we were able
You
to.
wanna bring that back at the next meeting
I
then?
think that, unless I'm mistaken, the board's probably fine with just having it as a 50-50 staggered term.
And
Unless
you all
somebody
figure,
would like
and
to
you all
get in the
figure it out.
weeds.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
We'll bring that back on consent then, in that way, at the next meeting, that way we.
All right,
Fine.
all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously.
Thank you
Thank
all
you,
so
Lori.
much. Allison, thank you also for your help.
Thank you.
All right, item 5B, surplus declaration of county vehicle. Ms. Amos.
Are we looking at the award?
5B.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, yes.
Good evening.
I looked at 5B and read something else.
Members of the board, in front of you, we have a memo tonight, for fire and EMS to have one of their Horton ambulances, mounted to a 2021 Dodge 4x4 cab and chassis. Blockade Enterprises is the only provider, of this type of service that we currently use. We also have a sole source completed. Funding for this project has been approved in the FY21 capital improvement budget in the ambulance replacement line. The cost of this project is $227,639. Staff requests that the contract with Blockade Enterprises be awarded for the scope and total cost listed in this memo.
Okay, motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, quick question. I see the total cost of $227,639. We'd originally, estimated, I believe, for remounts at what, $250?
270.
$270, okay, so it's a substantial savings then.
Yes.
All right, very good, very good. That's keeping our fleet in good shape and at a lower cost than what we'd initially planned for.
Yes.
All right. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Passes unanimously. Thank you, man. All right. 5C is appeal of Federal Emergency Management Agency's federal insurance rate map, depictions of Lake of the Woods. Mr. Voorhees.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. You may recall some email and discussion on this. Essentially, the Federal Emergency Management Agency runs the National Flood Insurance Program, and that program is based on ratings assigned to land based on a mapping regime they've put in place across the country. As they've worked to develop and refine the program, they are moving further and further into detailed and previously unmapped areas. So it's our turn to have some additional mapping come into Orange County. They issued draft maps. They're referred to often as FIRMs, the Federal or the Flood Insurance Rate Map. And the draft maps came out several months ago, thus opening a comment period. So we are in that comment period, which closes this month. We sent notice in accordance with state law to all the affected property owners. We sent postcard notices out and inviting them to comment and to get additional information. The most notable issue has been identified by Lake of the Woods. They, as you can imagine, have a great deal of knowledge and interest in how the lakes in that community are mapped and what an impact, or change to the firm might do to their ability to build or get a requirement to pay for insurance. And so they've noted that the draft firm is not aligned with their understanding of the lake levels, and they have engineering data to support it. They have done some outreach to FEMA, who have administratively concurred that they probably need to change those maps based on the engineering data. And we're proposing we support the Lake of the Woods HOA, who've adopted a resolution to this effect. And so tonight's action is for the Board of Supervisors to authorize the chairman to formally submit a letter to FEMA that calls this issue to FEMA's attention, asks them to make those adjustments, and also and that's called a community appeal because it's a little more comprehensive. And also include any individual appeals that we have received through our outreach program. We've received a number of those. So that's what this action is for this evening, and we're certainly happy to answer any questions.
I wondered whether or not maybe we ought to info our legislators, or would that just tick off the FEMA guys?
Mr. Frame, this is a pretty administrative process, and we've not
Seen any resistance?
seen any resistance from FEMA to make the
Alright,
adjustment.
So, need a motion to
So moved.
second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
I would like to make, while we're on this topic, Mr. Chairman, a comment. I received, and I assume others did as well, any number of phone calls as a result of the letters that went out. There was a lot of confusion about people that say, I got this letter, but, you know, as I look around, I've lived here for 50 years, I don't see any water, I've never seen any water, what is going on? And so I'm not sure how to fix that issue or if it can be fixed, but, you know, when, it's clear that letters from the county, especially that talk about floods and FEMA and things, it certainly gets people's attention. So
Flood insurance.
yeah, well, that was really the question. Does this mean I have to buy flood insurance? Was essentially the question that was being asked.
One of the things that I was looking at as we were doing this, at least on the plat of my land, it shows me where the lowest point on the house is.
Yeah.
And that, and I can compare that with the information that they provided. And so you can tell whether or not you're in trouble or not.
Yeah. Well, the process, I think we need to be, because this happens periodically, and so we just need to be as careful as we can be, even though we're an agent of FEMA in many respects and operating under their guidance. Our citizens, especially those that aren't familiar with this, Lake of the Woods has been very active and is a very informed.
Spent about 4 years on the board down there, and a year or so afterwards fighting
Right.
the DEQ or DCR's desire for us to spend $6 million on concreting our dam.
But the average citizen out in the county isn't that
No,
in
and
tune.
that's understandable.
And so they get something and they're like,
If,
what does this
you
mean?
know, is there some way we can explain to them? Because it isn't that difficult to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, I think those that I spoke with, I think are okay
You're
now.
you're okay with it?
But I only spoke to some small percentage of those that received letters. And, you know, those maps, if you look at them and take them literally, they can be unnerving. You know, it's in effect says, you could be about to flood. And that's not at all the case, but,
Some of the rainstorms we've had lately.
yeah, well, that's right. I mean,
And we actually have a subdivision that's, should be on these maps and is not, so,
well, enough said, we need to be very, you know, our role in this needs to be one that's, that we're very careful and clear about it.
Maybe you ought to recommend it for FEMA.
yeah, exactly. Oh, that would really go over well.
Can you hear us?
It's certainly, Mr. White, a challenge to cram a lot of information in a single postcard, and we did offer a phone number, and Sandra Thornton has taken a number of calls to explain, and we also made references to FEMA's call center and website, and the hope is that through at least some combination of all that effort, folks will find a way to get an explanation if they need it. And I did participate in a meeting with the Lake of the Woods Board where that sort of question was asked, you know, do you have to buy insurance? And the long and the short of it is, no one's compelling you to buy insurance if your home's paid for. Whether you do it or not, you might want to think about it if you're in a flood zone. But many times, if you have a mortgage, the bank will require you to have the insurance to protect their investment. So that's sort of the long and the short of it. And if you are in one of these covered zones, and I'm saying this because we have an audience at home, there might be at least 2, maybe 3 people watching, and at least they'll know. That was an attempt at humor. If you're a small one, if you're in a flood zone, there are some different building restrictions. So if you were going to add a basement or that sort of thing you wouldn't be able to do it in a flood zone, and you'd have to have some foundation venting to prevent the water from damaging your structure. So there are some implications, but aside from those, it's a voluntary program.
Well, and the other thing is, if your flood map goes on your property but doesn't go towards your house, no big
That-
deal.
Well, but that's the real issue, that it is not granular enough. It will show an area on a property, but the elevation between that flood level and the level of the house, in some cases, can be 100 feet of elevation. But you can't discern that from the map very well, because the linear distance could be quite close. It's a complex matter that can be alarming.
Well, there's another issue which nobody ever thinks about, which is, if there's a drainage ditch near your house, and somehow that drainage ditch gets blocked up and that water diverted into your basement, that's a flood.
To you, it's a flood.
And it's not covered by your insurance. I mean, so people also need to understand that. You don't need to be next to a lake or next to a creek or a river. You can
have a low spot in your yard.
Happened to my brother-in-law 2 years ago.
Thing that happens in water. Sometimes water makes a new channel when it gets very urgent, and so things can change.
Even some people over on Confederate Drive, with current, natural flow, have, water coming up to their basement or their ground level.
Absolutely. Real quick, gentlemen, Mr. Goodwin has joined us. Teal, are you there, sir?
I am.
And you are at your home, correct?
I am at my home.
Okay. Mr. Goodwin is at his home here in the town of Orange. Please show the record to reflect that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good, thank you. All right, any further discussion on this matter? All right, so, I guess we need a motion on this?
We already did it.
We did it, okay, I'm sorry, oh, that's right, Mr. White entered after the fact. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you didn't want me to discuss it during discussion, so.
I didn't want you to discuss it at all, to be very honest with you. Okay, next item is going to be 5D, which was added, and that is a discussion about tax relief for personal property. Mr. Johnson.
Mr. Chairman, I asked this to be put on, and we're living in very strange times, and with all of these restrictions, it's having a terrible impact on certain businesses. And I think that we should, as a board, should do what we can to help those businesses that are greatly impacted, and individuals as well. But obviously, an individual who works for a business or owns a business that is impacted is going to be personally impacted. So I would like to see us do something similar to what we did back in the spring, which is to move the deadline out for penalties and interest. That's A. B, I would also like to have a discussion about the possibility of us being able to facilitate some grant funding, if possible, for businesses. I know that I know I'm mixing two different things here, but I see this is all being very, very, very much in the moment. It's not something we can put off until one day next year. But I'll talk about that in a moment. So I would ask that we consider giving some kind of like a 60 or 90-day relief on the interest and the taxes and penalties and so forth.
Okay.
Are you looking at both personal property and the real estate that's due on the 5th?
I think we should just do it across the board, yes. Again, it'll still be due, people will still have to pay it, but if they're a week or 30 days or 45 days late, they won't get hit with these extra penalties that they normally would.
Glenda, is this going to be, I'll say, an acceptable impact, if we delay these?
Yeah, this won't even, as far as the financials come into play, since we're on a fiscal year basis. And I think that Mr. Boyd may have run it by the treasurer to make sure that she can have a.
Right, the one thing, I think Mr. Johnson has a very valid point, and, if we were in any other year, in any other circumstance, I would not necessarily be supportive of this, but due to the fact that it is nothing that the county or any of these businesses have brought upon themselves. It's been brought upon by the federal government and the state that, I think it is a token of goodwill that we can pass along, I guess is my big thing.
I mean, RSA is doing it.
Right, right. That's-
Mr. Chairman,
that's for him. Oh,
just, I know this is difficult to administer, but I'm a little bit concerned that, I don't know the percentage any longer, but last time I looked, a fairly high percentage of the real estate, at least had mortgages. And so these taxes are, the real estate taxes are paid by the mortgage company based on an escrow that's been set up. I'm not sure we want to induce mortgage companies to take advantage of this.
And hang on to the money.
And hang on to the money. I don't know how we
yeah.
avoid that, but, I don't think that's your intent.
No, I don't think we should, write to Bank of America and say, hey, you can hang on to the money an extra 90 days.
Right.
The way I read the state code provision, I actually think we could do it on a case-by-case basis, which would mean we could exclude certain kinds of cases, because it said, the official granting of such extension shall keep a record of every such extension, and any taxpayer who's been granted an extension, and it talks about specific taxpayers. So I think the way this is interpreted, we could carve out certain types of real estate where it's paid by the mortgage is not exempted, or.
I mean, I'd like to have us look at that and see. I mean, if it becomes so cumbersome and you can't do it, then that's one thing. But I don't think we need to be in the business of giving Bank of America, with the example,
The other
a
thing-
90-day break.
The other thing, the state code provision, we just need to be, I think we need to put everybody on notice. It says if they miss, the maximum we can extend is 90 days, but if we do extend 90 days, if they pay on 91, it's retroactive penalties and interest as if they'd never had an extension. So we really need to reinforce to people, we'll give you the extra if you choose 90, that's.
So your delay, or your fine doesn't start, your penalty doesn't start on the 91st day.
Well, on the 91st day, you go retroactive
You
as
get
if you've never
91
been
days
given an
worth of
extension.
penalty.
Right.
So I just think that's something, if we do it, we need to
We need
kind
to
of
make it very
broadcast
clear.
that part of it so that people don't think, well, shoot, in a pinch, I can go past the 90, well, it'll cost you a lot of money if you go past the 90. So just an FYI.
So if we just, I'm not sure that the banks are gonna try to hang on to that money that much longer, because the interest rates they're getting on it is pretty.
I'm not sure that, I'm not even sure the banks
No.
could do that. I think they're contractually obligated.
Probably so.
And it would
And
probably be
the other
more
thing is the
expensive.
administrative effort on their parts.
Would not be worth it.
They wouldn't even
But-
be able to get this information into their system in time,
Right.
because they're all scheduled to have it paid by the 5th.
But I think Mr. White's comment is to make sure that the intent is to help our county taxpayers and not big business.
May I offer a suggestion based on our attorney's thoughts? If you were to grant the authority to the treasurer to work with any taxpayer who presents to them a pandemic-related reason why they need an extension, that she could, in her discretion, authorize them to pay, up to 90 days late without penalty or interest. Then she could take them as they come and not have to do some giant you know, campaign and all that sort of thing. And then she would do exactly as the attorney has said, is take a note and,
We also need to let the public know that they need to come into the treasurer under those circumstances.
Yep.
Because, they're just worrying that they've missed their date and they're in trouble and don't realize that they have the opportunity, so you still need to publicize it fairly well.
And fairly quickly, because the due date is
Quickly is,
Yeah,
like this
yeah.
week, I guess, right?
Well, one possibility is to give everybody 30, with the treasurer having the ability to extend that 30 to 90 or something, so that we push everybody past this date that's coming up. Say, okay, we're gonna extend everybody 30, and then the treasurer has the ability to extend it to 90.
I like that idea
Yeah.
better.
Yeah, I think
like
that's, I think that's a good call. Yeah.
Right.
The details are less important to me than that we give people some relief. We've, this whole, situation that has arisen there's been a very disparate impact, and government has acted in some cases to lessen the impact, but that's also all over the place. And you've got businesses that didn't suffer one iota who've gamed the system for hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars. And you've got other businesses that are really hurting that aren't getting
The
anything.
guys with the bigger lawyers,
Oh, yeah. There's always wise guys who know how to game the system.
All right, can we get a revised motion or,
It says it has to, fortunately, it doesn't have to be an ordinance,
okay,
it has to be a resolution.
okay,
I don't think state law says resolutions have to be written, they usually are, but I would recommend we hereby resolve that we grant a 30-day extension on the payment of real estate personal property taxes, and grant the treasurer the authority to extend that 30 days up to 90 at the specific request of taxpayers.
That is my motion.
okay, motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good, passes unanimously.
Teal on that?
Yes,
Aye.
yes, he was there.
So we need to, Ted, Alice, we need to reduce that to writing,
we will do that.
and then get it.
Okay. Thank you very much for that, folks. All right, old business, guess this is going to be from Mr. Voorhees, the approval of the boundary line agreement with Spotsylvania County tabled from October 13th.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. You will recall the ongoing saga of coming to terms with our boundary between Orange County and Spotsylvania County. Extensive work was done to define that boundary based on parcel data contained in our mutual GIS systems, and a draft agreement between the two counties has been prepared. Both jurisdictions have held hearings. All property owners were noticed. Hearing was held, and the board chose to table the item pending the hearing and action of Spotsylvania County. They have subsequently adopted the agreement as drafted, and it is now ripe for the Orange County Board of Supervisors to do the same thing, which will then trigger the attorneys of the two jurisdictions to file the appropriate court paperwork to effectuate this boundary.
Very good.
I move to authorize the boundary line adjustment between Spotsylvania County and Orange County.
Okay,
I'll second that.
second. All right, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? None. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. Voorhees.
Yes, sir.
All right, nothing under the Department Director of Constitutional Officer reports. Next would be the County Attorney's report. Mr. Latchman.
I actually do have something this evening, Mr. Chairman. Two items. The first one, the Foxy Border issue reminded me, I was contacted recently by the Albemarle County Attorney, and they've identified several properties that they believe they should be getting the taxes on that are currently being taxed in Orange, that the GIS shows them in Albemarle. So we may see this issue pop up again from Albemarle County. Like I said, they contacted me a couple of weeks ago.
Actually, I wanted to give them
And
anything.
their commissioner of revenue contacted our commissioner and said, hey, that parcel's ours. I talked to the commissioner, and one of the parcels looked like it was an Albemarle, but the records are that Albemarle wrote us 20 years ago and said it's yours. So we're trying to weed through all that right now, but.
If they wrote us and told it was ours, why don't we just refer to that?
I need to be very much in the loop on that.
Okay.
And what taxes
This
do
is
they,
not Spotsylvania, this is serious stuff now.
and what do they pay in taxes on Purdy Park?
Nothing's happened, just telling you they've kind of launched a couple of trial balloons our direction. We haven't done
Yeah,
anything.
please, if you
I will
could
keep
send
you
me
in the
the backstory on that so I can look at the parcels.
I will forward you the email.
Kind of like just a probes here.
The second item, I emailed Allison a couple of pictures if she could put them up. I'm sure everybody's familiar with this structure. The town of Gordonsville wrote me, their attorney, and they would like for us to do something about that, the building of that. I think it used to be a hardware store or something. When you come into Gordonsville,
Thought that was Art Deco.
they're worried about the danger to citizens, and they've got an engineer said the walls are in danger of falling out on the road. And I suggested to them bringing a nuisance suit, which they could do themselves, but they're requesting that I bring it to your attention, and they feel like because we handle their building inspections, that we are more appropriate because the building inspector works for us to testify that that's a unsafe structure. I told them I think anybody can testify that's an unsafe structure. But I did tell them I would bring it to your attention. Maybe we can discuss it at a subsequent meeting, whether we're willing to do something, or you can discuss it now. But this is, I think, the third request from the town of Orange for us to do something.
Has the property owner been contacted in any way to?
I think the gentleman that owned it died, and his heir or heirs is kind of in question who has inherited this.
I can see why they would have some questions.
Well, my understanding, at one point, the thing was full of brand-new products that were inside the store that had never been pulled out,
Well, he bought up a lot of stuff, and so it was a mixture of, like a lot of salvage stuff, but my understanding was there was a lot of, metal and that sort of thing in there. Well, this has come up before, and your answer has always been that we don't have we have not adopted the maintenance code, is that correct?
They asked us to take care of it under building code, and I pointed out we have not adopted the maintenance code, so can't use building code. So I told them is nuisance law would be the way to deal with that, which they can do just as easily as we can do. It would be a nuisance suit, because that's a danger. Kids could go up in there and play, or it could fall in on somebody's head. So I've seen buildings much less dilapidated than that one be condemned as a nuisance.
Real quick in conjunction with that, and I just realized, I thought you had been copied on another letter from the town of Gordonsville. But this letter from the town of Gordonsville is from Mayor Coiner, and it's on behalf of the Gordonsville Town Council, the request of Ronald Johnson, Gordonsville Volunteer Company Fire Chief. I'm sending you this letter in support of the county's adoption of the Virginia statewide fire prevention code and hiring a certified county fire marshal. To do so is consistent with the 2015 Orange County Fire and EMS Strategic Plan, as well as 2014 Virginia Fire Service Board's report of findings and recommendations for the Orange County Department of Fire and EMS. Gordonsville Volunteer Fire Company has served our community for over 100 years. Adoption and enforcement of the statewide fire prevention code will enhance their efforts in this regard. The hiring of certified fire marshal to work with business and industries will ensure the safety of all those who live and work in our community. On behalf of our town council and the Orange County citizens who live within our community, I thank you for your consideration.
That had nothing to do with what we were discussing, Mr. Chairman.
Actually, it did.
It didn't have anything to, we weren't discussing Gordonsville. This wasn't the Gordonsville section of the agenda.
Well, the
That's
fire
what
code
that
would be
is.
another tool to use to go after this building. I think that's what they're saying.
Well, I don't think that place is gonna burn down.
Yeah. But I
It
did
might
receive.
burn up, but it won't burn down.
I think it might fall on somebody, I don't think it'll burn down, but.
It's definitely deteriorated in the 10 years I've been here.
I mean,
I think something obviously needs to be done, and it's a situation where there's not a, there's not an owner who's got some theoretically good reason for what's going on. I think it's just, it's almost to the level of being abandoned at this point.
Well, the nuisance suit itself, we could do, doesn't cost us anything, because we don't pay a filing fee, and I cost the same no matter what I do. The problem is, we'll then get an order that allows us to tear it down, and then somebody's gotta pay the money to tear it down and lien the property, and I don't know if the property has sufficient value in it to support the cost of tearing it down. See, getting a declaration that it needs to be torn down, we can do cheaply. It's the tearing it down that's the more problematic issue.
Well, maybe we could pursue it in the aspect that, if we were to get the declaration, that it needed to be torn down, that the town of Gordonsville could foot the bill for that,
Well, I think that, I mean,
and then go after whoever.
the property has probably got some decent amount of value.
I'm sure it has some value, it's commercial, good location right there at the gateway.
All right,
So if y'all wanna give it some thought, we can talk about it again next time, and, I mean, I'm more than happy to follow the suit. I'm not,
Well, I think one option is what Jim just said, which is, we can file the suit, and then it'd be up to Gordonsville to carry it from there. Is that a possibility?
I will write their lawyer and see if that's of interest to them.
because quite honestly, their mayor is always looking for, property to do town improvements on, and, that way they would be able to have a lien on it and get property to do improvements on it.
Well, and I will suggest that to her, because she kept, the town attorney kept saying, well, y'all have the building inspector, you have the witnesses, so we'll handle that part of it. If you guys handle the cost part, I'll see what they say.
You all handle the aftermath, yeah, okay.
Very good. All right. Is that all, Mr. Waxman?
And that's it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. County Administrator's Report, Mr. Voorhees.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two items. One is in your agenda, but I'll preface that with just an update that I've had a couple of Zoom conferences regarding the issue of cigarette taxation. That's a new authority that counties have been granted by the General Assembly, and we're being required to discuss a regional approach. The General Assembly was pretty clear, I guess, in discussing with VACO that if this came to pass, that the cigarette industry would appreciate it if counties would look at this as a regional issue and not just have a hodgepodge of 80 some odd different tax stamps and all that sort of thing. So there have been some efforts to look at what this would do, what it would be, how you would enforce it, how that kind of thing would be implemented administratively. And so what we've learned is our two towns in Orange do have their own cigarette tax. They buy their own stamps, and they handle it. Charlottesville likewise does the same thing. It appears that Albemarle County is in conversation with Charlottesville about a potential regional approach. It also appears that many of our neighboring counties are more interested in doing this regionally. And I've inquired of the Northern Virginia Cigarette Tax Board, which handles most of the jurisdictions north of Fauquier, that they are all part of a regional board and have told their administrator to take all inquiries as to additional members. So I just wanted to let you know that this conversation is sort of going. We have not had any conversation here about whether we would want to adopt a cigarette tax or not. The authority is up to 40 cents a pack. And my sort of thing would just be, if we were to do something on this issue, it would be easier to administer as a region and sort of be part of a regional rate and make it simple, so we don't kind of have people doing a lot of different things around and about. And I'll keep you posted as to anything else I learn or hear.
But your assessment is that the regions are generally receptive to, in essence, new members or new participation? Is that your take on it?
That's my take on it.
I think the only thing I would say is just, I kind of need to know more about, first of all, we're talking really hypothetical because we don't have a sales tax. But I'm guessing that when you go through the regional, they keep some portion at the region. And that worries me a little bit, because those kinds of things tend to get larded up over time, and you get a higher and higher proportion of money that stays with the region.
The other
So
thing,
I would like to know more about how that works. If it's something that's set in stone at the beginning that, 3% stays with the region and that's the way it will always be, or so forth.
it would also be nice to know if it's actually worth it in our case. We have probably 3, what I will call large suppliers of tobacco products within just the county boundaries, and the others are local stores. I don't think probably more than 5 local stores that sell it, and I don't know if they sell enough that it would be worth all the effort. If it would cost us more than it would to not, because most everything is either in the town of Orange or the town of Gordonsville. Just a thought process.
Well, I think that obviously would be part of whether we decide to, we're definitely gonna have to have that information so we know what we're doing.
And that exactly is the types of questions that folks are asking in these webinars, and how to estimate, and we've been given some models on estimating, but everybody, every community is a little different, and, trying to come up with per capita estimations may work in one jurisdiction, but not in another where they have all the retail outlets in a municipal setting, so.
I do think your small country stores probably sell a lot more cigarettes than you think.
Yes.
And certainly Walmart, I'm sure,
Walmart.
sells a lot.
Yep.
Yeah.
Dollar Generals, those kind of things.
So I just wanted to keep you apprised that these conversations are going on, so we haven't certainly made any decisions. That'd be something for the board to consider down the road. The second item is that I have provided a report to you, a couple pages in there. It's a quarterly response to what we've accomplished on your 2-year strategic priorities. While sometimes during this pandemic, it seems like time has stood still, maybe it still seems like that. I was actually pleasantly surprised when I went back to just kind of write up what we've done on some of these things, and we're making progress, and I'm certainly happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions? All right, thank you, sir. Anybody else? All right, very good. Next would be board comment.
Mr. Chairman, somewhat in connection with what we talked about earlier with the taxes, helping businesses who have been hammered by these restrictions starting in the spring and then sort of reinstituted under even, in some cases, harsher rules just several weeks ago. There was a certain amount of money from the COVID relief funds that we put into, I think they called them bounce back or something like that. So I would be interested in knowing whether or not there is any money left that could be directed into that. And also would ask that we be thinking about ways that we can make that happen. Those funds, I think, were all used up a while back, the ones that were actually specifically, you know, and so now we've got these new restrictions in place, so now there's, you know, we've got people that were just about ready to go under. These new restrictions are putting them under, and there is nothing presently coming from the state that I'm aware of, or the federal government. Maybe there's something that somebody's working on, but I guess I just want to keep that in our minds, and I guess I would ask Ted, you know, is there money left in the COVID piggy bank that could be repurposed? Maybe it was in another line item that didn't get used that could be repurposed.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I'm pleased to report that we've been sort of thinking along these same lines. All along, we've been nervous about this December deadline and how impractical it is, and that, you know, maybe we thought things would be over by now, but it looks like we're maybe sort of halfway through. So fortunately, I think with the vaccine announcements and some of the talk about how that gets rolled out and the pre-planning and all that, you know, people are talking about kind of a May timeframe when things may feel better. So now we have a little bit of time frame to work with. And by giving maximum flexibility to the administration on how we use these funds, we haven't locked ourselves too hard into any of those spending plans. We've been generally keeping up with them, but we were able to move things around a little bit. And through the use of our public safety salary strategy, which we talked about specifically in order to allow us to fund the EnerGov solution, we do plan to have funds back in the general fund where those December restrictions will be removed. Accordingly, we could do another round and have already, in fact, started talking about maybe doing a round in where we would take applications this month and award in January. We've reached out to the CIC group that had done the processing for us before to see if they're able to help us again. We hope to hear from them, you know, shortly. We don't have any reason to believe they couldn't do it for us. And so if the board gives me kind of the consensus tonight, we'll just keep moving down that path, and it wouldn't require necessarily any formal move for us to just go ahead and plan to do that and start publicizing it maybe in a week or so and open up the time frame for applications again.
Do you have any sense of how much you're talking about?
Well, I think we talked about another 200,000. And that served a nice, you know, nice number of businesses, about 10,000 roughly apiece, and so 20 businesses-ish.
Mr. Goodwin, would you be good with that?
That'll be fine.
I believe you have a consensus of the board then?
Very good, we'll get working on it.
Okay, very good, very good. We're still on board comment. Mr. White? Mr. Frank?
I would like to have done this back in the 18th when we were in Lake of the Woods, but I would like to wish Madeline S. Smith, 3 days ago, she had her 100th birthday.
Oh, my.
Oh, wow, very good.
Just wish her a happy birthday.
Very good. I've got a comment regarding COVID and everyone's response to it. I know it's been very challenging for all employees. It's not been an easy thing to deal with. Dealing with some of the public isn't necessarily the nicest. It's just a challenge coming into work every day, dealing with things. And I'd also like to say that don't forget about our public safety personnel, that yes, they are accustomed to emergency response on a regular basis, but I was having a conversation with my daughter the other day, and she was talking about emergency response personnel and hospital staff. And it is becoming even more challenging with the spike in COVID cases, but especially with flu season coming on. Just remember that all public safety staff, as well as all general county staff, has worked very hard and diligently, and it takes as much of a toll on them as it does anybody else. So, when people deal with the county, please try to keep in mind that our staff has worked through this the entire time, and I believe they've done a stellar job of providing for our
Yeah.
community.
Here, here.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Any other comment? We will move right ahead then to the informational items. If no one has any questions there, we'll move on to appointments to boards, commissions, and committees. And Allison, under the Board of Building Code Appeals,
Yes, sir.
are the first two, are they interested in continuing to serve? I know it says you contacted them.
I heard back from Mr. Gooch today, and he said yes.
Okay.
And I believe Mr. Allman also confirmed. So
Okay.
I heard back from both of them after the memo had already been published.
Okay, very good. So those are two that we could reappoint.
What about, Robert Anthony, Parks and Rec?
I heard from him like 2 hours ago, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So all three on Parks and Rec could also be reappointed.
Okay, also, Ray Matthews, I didn't realize his term was just about up. I would also nominate him for reappointment, provided he says yes, which I can't imagine that he would not say yes.
Okay.
So, I will make that nomination, and then, Mr. Allman and Mr. Gooch. And you have Mr. Clark, correct?
Mr. Clark, Mr. Anthony, and Mr. Lamb.
Okay. Very good. So those are the reappointments that, we would like to make. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Mr. Goodwin is aye as well. All right, very good. And let's see, calendar. Any changes to the calendar, Ms. Simpson?
No, sir, not that I'm aware.
All right, anyone have any issues with the calendar? All right, if not, we will go ahead and I believe, have to do this based on technology. We're moving into the public hearings, is that correct?
Yes, sir, and your first two are in person, so you can begin them whenever you're ready, and then we'll transition to your remote ones.
Okay. Then the first public hearing, Mr. Voorhees, did you want to discuss this, or?
Do you want me to present it?
Be happy to do that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Long story short on this is the board adopted a continuity of operations ordinance just over 6 months ago that essentially allows us to do the kind of thing we're doing now with a remote participation and handling public participation in some different ways. And so that's all set out in detail in the ordinance, which just expired at the end of last month. So we extended that on an emergency basis and in accordance with the Code of Virginia and our own ordinance need to formally hold a public hearing in order to extend it for the duration. And so it's our intent to extend the ordinance for 6 more months. I alluded to earlier, hoping that this would be behind us, perhaps in about 6 months, so hopefully that'll line up well. And so this is the item to do that.
Okay, very good, thank you. Open the public hearing. Any comments?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
All right, close public hearing. All in favor?
You need a motion, don't you?
Yes, motion.
So moved.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, unanimous. All right, public hearing number 2 is the proposed supplemental appropriations and budget amendments. Glenda, would you like to do this one? Spread the wealth a little bit.
Members of the board, this is a public hearing to consider, 2 budget amendments and supplemental appropriations. The first is for, the wireless hotspot locations, broadband project. And this was through a special state program, through the governor's broadband team and Department of Accounts, called Fast Track Broadband. And our award for Orange County is $1,999,620. And as you know, the receipt of these funds allowed us to take the $1.5 million that had previously been earmarked out of the regular CARES Act money and redirect that within our CARES Act response fund. So because of the large amount, it's more than 1% of our adopted annual budget, therefore the public hearing was necessary. The other public hearing is for a budget amendment for the school system. And that one totals $1,405,363. And a large part of that is from CARES Act funds, about 800,000 of it is for CARES Act funds. The rest of it is state and federal grant funds. There was a small amount, $9,998, that's tuition from other counties for the adult education fund. But also because of the amount, we are conducting the public hearing for that budget amendment tonight.
Okay, very good, thank you. Any questions? I'll open the public hearing. Anyone signed up?
No, sir, Mr.
Is
Chairman.
this for both of them?
Yes, they are listed as
Okay,
one public
fine,
hearing
all right.
on the agenda.
Yes, sir.
All right. Any further discussion, and if not, a motion?
I would move that we make the supplemental appropriation.
Okay, second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, may I clarify,
Yes.
Mr. Frame's motion? There are 2 resolutions in
Yeah,
the
I'm
board
gonna make
packet.
another motion.
Okay.
Okay,
I would think that would be separate.
so this will be for the resolution labeled
For the
public hearing
supplemental
2A.
appropriation.
This is,
This is for the CARES Act funding for
That's right.
General County.
Yes.
Okay. Second? With the,
second.
all right, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I also make a motion
All
to
5?
approve the budget amendment for the supplemental appropriation for the schools.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye, Mr. Goodwin as well. All right, very good. Okay, at this time, I'm going to wing it a little bit. Due to technology issues, we are going to recess so that we can set up Zoom access and YouTube access for our second 2 public hearings. So it will probably be around 6:10, 6:15 before we get started with that. So we are now in recess.